pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a reaction video, a response to something I just saw the other day, May 25th, on LitHub. The title is 38 Novels You Need to Read This Summer. And so I had to do a fairly extensive scan to make sure that they weren't recommending beach reads or summer books. If you know anything about me, you know that I would rather do just about anything than read a beach read novel. But these are quite a wide variety of novels, but a fair chunk of them are Sean the Book Maniac type of books, i.e. literary fiction, and those are the ones that I'm going to be reacting to. I'm not going to comment on all 38. Some of them were automatically excluded, but they were romance or horror novels or something. Of course, I'm putting the link into the show notes so you can do your own review and response video if you're so inclined, but this is mine, and quite a few of these look really good. Obviously, I'm not planning to read them this summer. I'm going to be a little busy this summer since I've already committed to reading the Booker long list. But maybe some of these will be on that. So, there is, I think, about a half dozen different LitHub personnel that have their own short list of recommendations, starting with Emily Temple, and I saw her on a Zoom literary something or other last year and fell in love with her. She's a lovely person. I didn't recognize any of the other names and won't be commenting on them, but Emily Temple, the managing editor of LitHub, recommends a new novel coming out, this would be the American release dates, coming out today! Oh my god! I'm filming this on June 1st, Tokyo time, and this is published in America today. The new Edward St. Aubyn novel, Double Blind. I have not read any of St. Aubyn's novels. I know Adam's a big fan of his Patrick Melrose series, and I actually have two of the very first Kindle books I ever bought were the first two in that Patrick Melrose series, and I still have never read them. I've got to get to them. Anyway, this one is not connected with that, and it is climate fiction, which would, having made the mistake of giving the Richard Powers novel a try, it usually would make me run the other direction, but this one is irrepressibly British, emotionally engaging, and intellectually stimulating. I will be the judge of that, but I've been curious about St. Aubyn forever, and this one, Double Blind, looks good. And Adam, I know you're a fan of St. Aubyn, but how about that cover? What do you think? I have no idea whether this would be for me, but the way that Emily Temple talks about it, I'm not going to read to you from what she said, but it's a novel by Beth Morgan called A Touch of Jen, coming out in July. And the cover's rather interesting, provocative, and she says it's like if Hallie Butler fell asleep watching The Host. I have no idea who Hallie Butler is or what The Host is. But anyway, it's a millennial comedy of manners. I like the millennials. I think we should let them run everything. And it morphs into a weird horror novel, so I'm not sure. But it's mostly the cover that makes me curious about this one. This is one that I will not just go out and buy or pre-order. I will wait to hear some BookTube reviews of it by people who are kind of synced with my taste before I commit. The next one is Katie Kitamura, Intimacies. She's a Japanese-American novelist, and I haven't read anything she's written. I've been wondering about her and wanting to try something. She has a novel coming out in July, Intimacies. She has a knack for creating tension even when nothing is happening. That sounds like a Sean book. The main protagonist is a woman who has recently moved to The Hague to work as an interpreter at the International Court. This might be a place to start with Katie Kitamura, or I might start with something on the backlist, but this one caught my eye. Just in passing, no, I will not be trying Alexandra Kleeman's novel coming out in August, Something New Under the Sun. I suffered through, I don't know if it was her last one. I mean, I liked it until about the second third of the novel. What was it called? Oh, and I bailed on that one. She is a very weird writer, I don't know, what would you call it? Experimental. You too can have a body like mine. I got about 3/4 of the way through that and I bailed in disgust. It was just too weird for me. She's got a new one coming out. Something New Under the Sun. And it's set in a darkly unsettling near-future Hollywood, which is also enough for me to run in the other direction. But maybe one of you might like to try that one. Mona Awad has a new one coming out in August, All's Well, and I bought her last one, Bunny, and read the first sentence or first paragraph to you all during my book haul and did a pre-bail. So no, I don't think she's for me. But the next one I actually have. I guess it's being released in America on August 10th. But it's already out in the UK and I have a copy on my to-be book-hauled pile. The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore. And I can't remember how I heard about it now, but it's a historical novel set in the mid-17th centuries. In the mid-17th century in England, and it's to do with the puritanical fever gripping the nation and the witch trials or witches. So I heard good things about it, enough that I actually bought it, so I would like to get to it soon. So that's one that I have in my hot little hands. And this is A.K. Blakemore's first novel, and we need to look at the author photo for her. She has, in addition to having published 2 full-length collections of poetry, she has translated the works of the Sichuanese poet Yu Yo-Yo. She sounds like a very interesting person. This one sounds interesting, and I want to do a little bit of a rant. It's an Icelandic writer in English translation. I think I can pronounce the name. Þóra Hjörleifsdóttir. And the novel is called Magma, coming out in July, translated from the Icelandic by Meg Matich. On the webpage of this LitHub article, this is the cover. But in fact, that was the ARC cover, and that is a fabulous cover. I would buy the book just for that cover. And this is the cover that the publisher is coming out with in July. I want the ARC cover! So this is a quiet novel about the nuances, the small gestures and big silences of a relationship. So it's a relationship-based novel, not everybody's cup of tea, but if it's beautifully written, and if the woman is anything like the woman on the cover of the ARC, it sounds very much like a Sean book. Another debut novel coming out in July by Pik-Shuen Fung, Ghost Forest. Ghost Forest. And look at that cover. Adam, don't you love it? I think it's a fabulous cover. And it is a novel about grief. The protagonist is grieving her astronaut father. That's all I need to know, although I might like to hear a little bit more about it before I commit to buying it, but it did catch my eye. Claire Luchette, Agatha of Little Neon, coming out in August. It's not translated, I guess, Claire Luchette. It's about 4 Catholic sisters, set in a former mill town. And the storyline includes abusive priests who appear in the news. So that sounds pretty interesting. I want to look into more about that. The little bit that's here, it was enough for me that, yeah, this is on my list of books to investigate. Here is a Yugoslavian novel by Lana Bastašić, Catch the Rabbit. Oh, fascinating. Translated from the Serbo-Croatian by the author. Oh, that's fascinating. I don't think I've ever read a book that was translated into English by the author. That's fascinating. It's the excavation of a fraught teenage friendship. 2 estranged women. So I know that my book buddy, the Irish writer Ronan Hession, is reading a lot of Yugoslav, Serbo-Croatian literature, so this one is probably already on his radar. But if not, shout out to Ronan, you better check this out, because one of the main characters, they're estranged friends, and one of them is now in Dublin. Her former best friend is, I don't know where she lives, but they go on a road trip to find the other friend's long-lost brother. That sounds pretty interesting. Yan Lianke, the Chinese novelist, has a new novel coming out in a couple of weeks. Hard Like Water, translated from the Chinese by Carlos Rojas. I really like him, but I don't know how many of his novels I need to read. Not that I think they're all the same, but they're not really Sean books. I first read his novella, Marrow, which I loved. It was about a single mother. Her husband committed suicide, but stayed in the story as a ghost for the rest of the story or the rest of the novella. But single mother is raising a family of mentally challenged children, and she goes to great lengths to find husbands and wives for them all so they'll be taken care of after she shuffles off this mortal coil. And it is wacky and emotionally compelling and just was unlike anything I'd ever read. After that, I read a full-length novel by him, and I didn't like it as much. I thought it was good, but just not. He's a satirical writer, and in Marrow, I got more out of it than satire. This novel was more strictly satirical, and I liked it. The Explosion Chronicles wasn't quite my jam. I gave it 4 stars, so it wasn't terrible or anything, but just I thought after I read it, I'm not sure if I need to read any more by him. But this one is an epic tale of love, lust, betrayal, and corruption, set during the Cultural Revolution. Here is a post-Arab Spring Egyptian novel called Slipping by Mohamed Kheir, translated from the Arabic by Robin Moger. I don't know if I would have noticed it, except that I just a few months ago read Palace Walk by Naguib Mahfouz, and I'm also working my way through the Alexandrian Quartet, which is not by an Egyptian writer, but is set in Alexandria. And this is a challenging, fantastical novel set in post-Arab Spring Egypt, where the boundaries between history, myth, dreaming, and waking are in flux. So that makes me nervous, but I think I do better with mythical stuff and maybe kind of magical realism when it's not set in Western culture. And because I'm newly curious about Egypt, this is on my list to at least investigate further. The first of maybe 2, or 3 NYRB books on this list is one coming out in July by William Gardner Smith, The Stone Face. The little blurb here totally sold me, so this is one I don't need to know more about. I'm buying it. The author, William Gardner Smith, I might have to look up something about him. He started writing this novel in 1961 when he was living in France, and the Algerian war tensions were kind of overrunning French culture. There was a lot of anti-Arab racism that was just infecting all strands of French culture and society at that time. And I'm assuming the author, we're going to look him up in a minute, William Gardner Smith, was African American, and his protagonist is African American who left America to get away from all the racist crap happening there, and finds himself enmeshed in a new culture where the Arabs are getting it, and he's feeling kind of complicit or sorting through his reaction to being a black American and an African American in France, and having it relatively easy compared to back home, but witnessing all the horrific racism against Arabs. So that sounds like a Sean book through and through. So let's find out if my assumptions about William Gardner Smith are correct. I've never heard of him. He died in 1974 in Paris, aged 47. And he was a black social protest novelist. His debut novel, Last of the Conquerors, was published in 1948. Okay. Yeah, that one is a definite buy. I know enough about that one that I'm just going to buy it. This one caught my eye, not just because of the cover, but the cover is pretty great, don't you think? Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson, coming out in August. It's a debut set in a Pacific Northwest logging town in 1977, and it has to do with logging, forestry, environmentalism, all that stuff. Sounds like a Sean book. This one looks interesting. I need to know a little bit more about it. 3 Rooms by Joe Hamya, coming out at the end of August. It's a debut novel, and it is about a 21st century worker who is having trouble making ends meet. She's living in a rented room at Oxford as a research assistant, and eventually has to move back in with her parents. It's an anti-coming-of-age story. That sounds interesting. Another NYRB book by George R. Stewart, Storm, coming out in mid-August, set in California, 1941. And it's about a storm in California around that time. It's considered an early example, a prototype of the echo novel. Well, that's it. Now, I have only talked about probably less than half of the 38 books, so you need to go check it out and see all the ones that might appeal to you that I just passed over completely. But those are the ones that caught my eye, and that was fun. Thanks for watching.